This is Chad. How are you?
I'm well. How are you?
Man, it's a busy day today. Busy day. So
I hear ya.
Took me a little longer to get home than expected.
That's totally fine.
So I'm in Atlanta, and 285 during certain times of the day. If there's a wreck, you can take 35 minutes just to go 2 miles. So.
Oh gosh, I hear you. We're in Chicago, so it's getting from here to O'Hare Airport is never fun.
Right.
Yeah. So Laura was just looking for me to touch base with you about any information you might have that could help Brendan.
Right. Yeah, just let me give you a background real quick.
Sure.
I have 31 books that are published in the Making a Murderer case. So I'm an author out in Atlanta, Georgia, basically. And I've always kind of gone over the political aspects of the case because there were a lot of political attorneys attached to the case who either prosecuted or worked on the defense that were attached to Madison. So over the last several years, Barb, Brendan's mother, I've been in touch with Barb, and I had a senator who gave Nirider some stuff at a Milwaukee. They were doing a panel discussion, Miss Nirider and Mr. Drizin, and there was some information given to her, but she never followed up on it. And I guess that's been over a year and a half ago, maybe now. And
so you gave information to a senator?
Yeah. So my senator friend, he's a senator in Milwaukee. And and so he was near the event, so I emailed him the information, from my research, and he met her at the panel discussion, and I just don't believe she ever followed up with it. Which I know how that thing goes; it's a hit or miss, regardless, So I know that Miss Nirider's busy, but
who's the senator who you gave the information to?
He was a senator candidate at the time. He's been in politics, I guess, for half of his adult life, maybe.
Gotcha.
So yeah, he was at the place. But I just have some issues looking back at a Wisconsin Criminal Justice Study Commission, and I wanted to pass this information on to Miss Nirider because I find it very, very interesting.
Sure.
And I don't know if you're familiar with the Wisconsin Criminal Justice Study Commission.
Wisconsin Criminal Justice Study Commission, is that right?
Yeah. Have you ever heard of that?
I have not. Can you explain it?
Okay, so you're familiar with the Avery Task Force, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so the Wisconsin Criminal Justice Study Commission is what the Avery Task Force became on August 31st of 2006. Basically, Peg Lautenschlager, the former Attorney General, she took several people who were seated to the Avery Task Force, and they moved forward with what was known as the Wisconsin Criminal Justice Study Commission. Now, the Avery bill that was passed, it gets renamed to the Criminal Justice Reforms Package, which stems off of the new name for the task force. So it was voted on by all the members. Because are you familiar with Mark Gundrum?
No, who's Mark Gundrum?
Okay, so Mark Gundrum created the Avery Task Force.
Okay.
And at the time in November, when all the evidence started coming back to Stephen Avery, Mark Gundrum makes a statement in the press that to continue the Avery bill in Stephen Avery's name, it would be disrespectful to the Hallbacks. So they have a unanimous decision inside the Wisconsin Criminal Justice Study Commission to vote to change the name, and ironically, Stephen Glenn and Jerry Buden voted unanimously to change the name, and Stephen Glenn was Stephen's attorney at this point, civil suit attorney. And they changed the name because they felt all the evidence pointed to Steve. So they changed the name from the Avery bill to the Criminal Justice Reforms Package right before Doyle signs it. So, I've always found that very fascinating, that you would sit there and think Stephen's guilty in November and then send Jerry Buden to defend him in February whenever you just signed a bill to take Avery's name out of the bill. But I don't know if you ever met Jerry Buden in person or Dean Strang or Stephen Glenn. I don't know what your background is. Could you give me some insight to your background?
Oh, sure. I'm basically the media relations person at the center these days. So
okay.
I kind of field calls of various natures. This including any possible reporter or anything like that might call about the case or any other case.
Right. Okay. Cool. So you've been working there a while?
About a year. Cool. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, awesome. Well, thank you for all your help that you do at the center there. It's really awesome.
Thanks very much for championing the cause.
Yeah.
Really appreciate it.
So I went down a rabbit hole, I guess. It's been going on 6 years now, and so I'm pretty sure you're familiar with Making a Murder. I'm pretty sure you watched Making a Murder, correct?
Yes.
Okay,
yes,
so we have a time period. We're at 2003 when we start, and Stephen Glenn and Walt Kelly, they depict how the sexual assault of Penny Bernstein by Gregory Allen, put Stephen in jail for 18 years. And when Making a Murder, the first episode starts, we're at the exoneration of Stephen in 2003, and then we flash forward to 2005, where Teresa Hallback is reported missing. Now, it's amazing to me that the entire political aspect is left out, because this was a huge political nightmare for Madison, basically. And so I just wanted to start investigating that realm and see if I could make any connections. And oh my God, you'd just be blown away by some of this stuff. And I guess there's an old saying that like when there's 1,001 coincidences, it's no longer a coincidence, it's a pattern.
Sure.
So what I find interesting, Nirider has had this information given to her. I emailed her, but I've never had any follow-ups with her. But there's a Criminal Justice Study Commission meeting that happens on February 23rd of 2006. And this is like 6 days before Mark Wiegert and Tom Fassbender, the investigators who were investigating both Brendan at this time, they're interviewing him on March 1st, and that's where we get this alleged confession from Brendan Dassey.
Right.
So it's important to understand that Steven Drizin was actually at this meeting. And if you want a link, I can give you a link real quick if there's.
Sure.
Where you can pull this up and read it with me. So because you might get lost because it's a huge web. But I want you to see.
Yeah, I appreciate the link. Yep.
I want you to see the information for itself, to know I'm not fabricating anything, so you can see it. Give me just a second, and I will text. Is it text message the best way to get that over to you?
Do you think you can just spell out the link? I have my computer open. It'll be easier to look on my computer.
Okay, it's a very long link.
Oh, okay. Well, then just text it to me.
Okay, yes.
Yeah. Sure. I was just gonna ask a quick question. What was the date of the meeting that you said happened?
It is February 23rd, 2006.
Okay.
This is literally just days before Brendan Dassey goes to his February 27th meeting, at Fox Lake and Fox Hills, and is interrogated for 3 days. So,
right.
So it's very crucial. The subject is very sensitive in here, and I mean, it's just going to blow your mind when I get into this. I'm trying to get this sent to you. Okay, give me just a second.
Sure.
I wish our our phones and our computer migrated quicker.
Yeah, no kidding. I hear you. Okay. Yeah.
Okay, and your phone number is 786. That's the one you want me to send it to?
That's right. Yeah.
Okay.
I'm just taking some notes as we talk.
Okay.
So I remember the things that I should tell Laura.
Okay, that link says that it's sent, so just whenever you get that, let me know.
Alright, let's see. And what is this a link to exactly?
It is the summary meeting for that February 23rd, 2006 meeting.
Oh, okay. Hi. Okay, got it.
Okay, so I believe it is 13 pages total. It's 11 pages total on this, but like the PDF sometimes on the computer pulls it up 13. So it's 11 pages total in their file. If you on the first page it says Wisconsin Criminal Justice Study Commission, and it says held February 23rd, 2006 at Marquette University in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. And then you got a list present for commission meeting, and you can note Stephen Glenn's present, Jerry Buden's present, Penny Bernstein's actually present, Keith Finley's present. I mean, Keith was working big time with this right at the moment. So it's staffed by Byron Lickstein, and Byron, he does a lot of reports on like read techniques as well. If you get into his past and everything. But it's funny because Joseph Buckley was there, and you do know who Mr. Buckley is, right?
Remind me.
He is the president of the Reed and Associates.
President of, sorry, say that again?
The president of Reed and Associates. He's one of the guys who, the Reed technique, basically.
Right.
So let me just fill you in on the Criminal Justice Study Commission. It pulls experts from around the region and around the United States that would come in and talk. So the bipartisan commissions in Wisconsin, they would be able to better do court cases and have better defense or incriminating laws and stuff that would just, convict or exculpate your defendant, right? So this was a big thing. If you follow on page 1, Buckley goes into the Reed technique, and he starts talking. There's a lot of people that get up and start presenting stuff. Now, Ken Hammond, who was the director of the Wisconsin Department of Justice at the time, he gets up and speaks. He talks about Attorney General Peg Lautenschlager's model policy on electronic recording at the time. Now, since 2004, early 2004, Jerry Buden started co-authoring the legislation, the statute on the electronic monitoring of juveniles. So he was very instrumental in getting that portion of the Avery bill, the statutes written up. And I don't know if you know that or not. Are you familiar with any of that?
familiar with some of that, yeah.
Okay, so
not in depth, but yeah.
So if we go down to page 4, if you look at the last paragraph, it says Malmestat then introduced the next presenter, who is Steven Drizin. Okay, and Drizin was actually invited out there by a guy named Leo and Budin himself, because Drizin's like he's the Michael Jordan in the region at this time still on the expertise. I mean, if you ever needed a expert witness on juvenile confessions in 2006, you know, he was doing a lot of drafts for political factions and law magazines going back to 2001. So here we are. That's why he was called to this meeting. Okay, so Drizin goes in and talks about the juveniles, and he's given statistics on juveniles here, and that he said that on page 522 he said that children are less able to understand the Miranda rights, which result in them waiving their Miranda rights 95% of the time. So it just goes on and on about Drizin. You know, he's showing videotapes, he's noting problems with post-admission narrative. He's going down and giving his expertise on electronic monitoring for juveniles, basically, in this thing. So if we go to the top of page 6, are you
on page 6? Okay.
It says Budin asked Drizin to elaborate on the factors a judge should consider in conducting a pretrial reliability hearing for a confession. Okay, you following me?
Yep.
Okay, and Drizin said that courts should consider whether the confession fits objectively knowable facts of the crime, whether the confession contains non-public details, and that would be known only by the police or the true perpetrator, and whether the confession led police to information they didn't already know. Now, what I find ironic about this, and you might have to read it a couple of times when you're researching, but this very statement will become Brendan's future 6 days later. Okay, so you see where it says whether the confession contains non-public details. That would be only known by the police. The public did not ever know that Teresa Hallback was allegedly shot in the head, right?
Not at this point, right.
At this point, they didn't know that. Only law enforcement knew that. So Mark Wiegert basically spoon feeds Brendan Dassey the question, who shot her in the head, and then we have Brendan saying he did, right? So Brendan never volunteered that, which I don't know if it's ever been presented by Nirider or Mr. Drizin, but they also set Brendan up to being in the garage prior to asking the question. So it's like setting the scene, okay, for Fassbender's original narrative that he wanted, you know. So anyways, number 3, it says whether the confession led police to information they didn't already know, and so his confession leads police to go get a search warrant of Steven's garage, and then that's where we find what is known as items F, L, and FK in Stephen Avery's trial, which is bullet fragments that they found on the ground. Now, there's 2 things I want to ask about these bullet fragments. Number 1, do you know that these bullet fragments were found off camera?
Do I personally?
Yeah, I mean.
I have no idea.
Does Laura and this Nirider know that these were off camera? Because it's important. When they go into Stephen Avery's garage that night, they're rolling the video camera, and it's got the DCIs involved, the Division of Criminal Investigations. They're rolling the video camera, and they videotape their entire time being spent in the garage, but they don't come back out the door. They break the lock on camera, go in, but they turn the video camera off inside the garage, and they don't come out of the garage. And then on the way out the door, a DCI agent looks down and he thinks he sees a nail, the head of a nail in a crack, and he picks it up, and lo and behold, it's the bullets. Now, we know how many times they searched this garage back in November. They found shell casings. They never found any bullet fragments, okay? And I just think it's highly suspicious that they only find the bullet fragments going out the door with the camera off, right? I mean, you should have left that garage with that camera rolling, you know? And so another note you need to make is on February 21st. February 21st. This was 2 days before this meeting. The state crime lab fires Brendan Dassey or Stephen Avery's rifle. The rifle that's found in Stephen Avery's room is fired on February 21st. So, I mean, it's a little suspicious to me that, you know, you're firing the rifle right before you spoon feed Brendan a loaded question, right? And then that gives them access to bullet fragments that you find off camera, which is highly suspicious to me. I mean, I don't know if that would be suspicious to you in your area, but to me it's very suspicious. And the reason it's suspicious because November 9th, you can write this date down. On November 9th, investigator Fassbender tells tells Stephen Avery that we have her DNA in your garage. And this is the day that Stephen Avery's arrested. We have her DNA in your garage. He's talking about Teresa Hallback. And so November 11th, 2 days later, he writes a letter to Sherry Culhane, and he says, put her in his garage. So we flash forward to March 1st, and then we have the loaded question from Wiegert, who's in Fassbender's present, is corroborating Fassbender's narrative. And they've already set him up in the garage at this point. They set the scene for Brendan Dassey himself. So when Dassey talks about where she got shot, they already got the scene set. So,
who did Fassbender write the letter to?
To Sherry Culhane, who is she was the Wisconsin State Crime Lab person who tested the bullet fragments found.
Gotcha, right. Okay.
Now here's a problem. Here's the major problem that I have, and if you can set this on a piece of paper all by itself when you take notes. Brendan Dassey never had the biological material. He never had samples of these bullet fragments preserved for his trial. Okay? And this is a big issue, and I've never heard Drizin talk about it, and I've never heard Nirider talk about this. But when they did the Avery bill, Norman Gahn, who was a special prosecutor, and even Jerry Budin himself, they co-authored a part of what's known as evidence retention statute, and it's inside of this Avery bill. And you're supposed to preserve any biological material for the defendant, right? So Brendan's confession specifically led to these bullet fragments in the garage. So by law, in the evidence retention statute, Brendan was supposed to be preserved samples of what was known as item F, K, and FL in Stephen Avery's trial, but they never preserved Brendan Dassey any of the biological material. And that's a severe constitutional rights violation for him. I mean, so that bill was passed on November 12th, and the law enforcement, the attorney general, everybody, the state crime lab, all their employees were very well educated on the evidence retention statute. But here we have Brendan Dassey not getting any of this material preserved for his own trial. And it's funny because if you have these bullets found off camera and they're in corroboration with Fassbender's narrative, and then it goes back to Fassbender telling Sherry Colhane back in November, put her in the garage, and then it's Sherry Colhane ends up contaminating item FK and FL. It's like they're destroying the evidence on purpose. And Brendan Dassey never gets it. He never has it preserved for him. So in the part of Making a Murder, we see Norman Gahn, and he's talking in the basement of the courthouse, and when they had the big press conference set up.
Right.
He says sometimes we have to deviate from protocol to make sense, and he's talking about Sherry Colhane's contamination of the bullet fragments, right? What should have been said there by both Gahn and Jerry Buden, because they both co-authored this law, is, oh, no worries, we'll just check the samples for Brendan Dassey. Because they know that Brendan Dassey is supposed to have this biological material preserved, samples. And so
Buting and who else co-authored the law?
Norman Gahn, who is
okay.
special prosecutor, and you know that they're talking in two different interviews down there, but they both knew that Brendan Dassey was supposed to have the samples preserved, and so did Sherry Colhane. I mean this law had just passed in November, and they've done everything to educate everybody on this new bill that was passed. So to me, and it should be to any attorney, you're diverting your eyes from Brendan Dassey not having samples preserved, and you're saying, oh, you're arguing a contamination law with Colhane. And the argument, there should have never been an argument to divert from Brendan Dassey. You should have said, hey, well, we got samples preserved in Brendan's trial, and we should be able to use those, wait for results when we do that. Because, they sealed 9 documents from Brendan Dassey, and they separated him as a co-defendant from Stephen Avery, right? And automatically, with his confession leading to those bullets, Brendan Dassey should have items FK and FL preserved in his trial case. I mean, would you agree with that?
An FL, yeah. Interesting. So sealed 9 documents for. In other words, you're saying they sealed 9 documents for Brendan to keep his case separate from
Stephen, but they didn't. But never added items FK and FL, which totally violated his thing. Now, if you go back into this meeting, Drizin basically gives a defense at this meeting that I've never heard Drizin give a defense for Brendan since he's been a appellate conviction attorney for Brendan or not. But he basically says, to destroy the credibility of the confession, you destroy the reliability of the evidence that's found. You get what I'm saying?
Say that one more time.
To destroy the credibility of a confession, you destroy the reliability of the evidence found that confession leads to. And this is a defense that Drizin gave 6 days before Brendan Dassey is coerced, but he never has used this defense. So to give you an example, at the en banc hearing, when we have a panel, one of the male judges asked Miss Nirider, he goes, what day were the shell casings found? And and he's wanting to know this because he's wanting to see how reliable the evidence is with the confession, with Brendan's confession, right? So Miss Nirider tells the judge panel that the bullets were found, that the shell casings were found in November, right? And so then the judge goes on to say, okay, and then we got bullet fragments that are being found after the search warrant on March 1st, and so the judge is like saying, okay, it's possible that we found the shell casings, but these officers just overlooked the bullet fragments, right?
Right.
But what should have been said as a defense, and I mean this should be out the gate, is that the bullets are test fired on February 21st, and on March 1st, they're found off camera, which, I mean, we don't have any, I mean, the reliability right there, if you're finding the evidence off camera and the gun has been test fired just 6 days before you search the garage, that's plausible that the state crime lab is following Fassbender's narrative of, hey, fire this gun, go take these bullet fragments and plant them in this garage, because we got to put DNA on them, like we told Steven back in November 9th. We found her DNA in your garage, and they hadn't found anything. They hadn't found anything at this point, right? So he got ahead of himself, by 4 months, basically. But Then there was never told at the en banc that Brendan Dassey never had these bullet fragments preserved for his case trial, so they can't even test them, right? And so they were found March 1st, and they were destroyed and contaminated as early as April 12th. And then you have Norman Gahn, who also showed up at these Wisconsin Criminal Justice Study Commission meetings, because he's a Wisconsin pioneer of DNA, and he's like the Michael Jordan in the region, right? So the first time in his 45 years of everything, you got a man who doesn't blow a whistle on this, but instead he backs up Sherry Colhane's deviation, which he should, if he was honest, you should definitely be blowing a whistle on the corroboration of this evidence, corroborating Fassbender's narrative.
What was the gentleman's name again that you just mentioned?
That would be Norman Gahn.
Oh, this is the same.
He's special prosecutor. So it's just amazing to me that he not only did he co-author the evidence retention statute in that Avery bill, but he never follows the guidelines and preserves that biological material for Brendan. And then in 2011, he's the same guy who gives the bones back to the Hallback family. So it's like you wrote an evidence retention statute that you're supposed to keep biological material for X amount of time, but yet here you are allowing bullets to be destroyed, evidence to be destroyed, bones given back to the family. When are we gonna keep the evidence? And it's funny because the only time that he's ever deviated from any of this is in the Avery and Dassey trial itself. No other time in his history. So it's like Fassbender had him at his disposal. The state had him at his disposal. Another interesting fact. So Buden being involved in this electronic monitoring with writing these statements and these bills for the statute. In December of 2005, January of 2006, and February 2006, Buden is going around law enforcement conferences with Ken Hammond, the director of the Department of Justice, and Fassbender himself, And they're holding law enforcement conferences in places like La Crosse, Wisconsin, Milwaukee, Wisconsin, Green Bay, Wisconsin, and they're educating people on how to the new statute of the electronic monitoring of juveniles, right? And Buden was in charge of getting the funds together for all 72 Wisconsin counties to be equipped with video equipment and then the new audio equipment as the law states. So here's my main question to you, and this is my main question to Miss Nirider.
Okay.
Drizin's invited as a guest with Jeff Buckley, who is the president of Reed and Associates. Okay, that's a big name. That should be a big name if you work in the Innocence Project. Okay. Drizin's invited out here because of his expertise. Now, Drizin, you'd have to agree that even in February 23rd, 2006, he's the Michael Jordan of juvenile confessions. Would you agree with that statement? So if he's good enough to be an expert to come volunteer his time on February 23rd, 2006 at this commission, 7 days later, when Ken Kratz is doing his pre-trial press conference and on Brendan Dassey and saying, giving this horrible story, why is Steven Drizin not contacted? You get what I'm saying? Like he literally hypothesized and gave an example on this page. On page 6, the top 3 statements, like this literally becomes Brendan Dassey's fate. 1, 2, and 3 literally becomes Brendan Dassey's fate. And this isn't like 6 months prior to this. This isn't a year prior. This is 6 days. Okay, so where is Drizin? Why is there no communication with Buden and Drizin, and Buden saying, hey, this electronic monitoring statute I've been working on since 2004, you're never going to believe this. This Brendan Dassey is Stephen Avery's nephew, and Drizin knew who Stephen Avery was at that time. He was working with the Innocent Project. He knew good and well who Brendan Dassey was. So why does it Drizin step forward and say, hey, you're gonna need me as an expert witness here, whether Brendan Dassey's staying in Stephen Avery's trial or whether you split the co-defendants. Buden and Drizin should have contacted Barb or Brendan's attorneys and said, hey, we need to get Drizin, the expert witness, to show up at your case. And so why was Drizin never there? Like you figure he's been volunteering his time for the state for years, and then this thing goes down. Brendan Dassey, Brendan is indigent. He has public defenders, right? So if you hire an expert witness and Drizin is your expert witness, you don't have to pay Drizin to show up, but it's so important and crucial at this point because Drizin is one of the most reliable persons in this region. If you're talking for the state and these politics, for senators and the attorney general's behalf, and what you say becomes Brendan Dassey's fate 6 days later, you should get your ass in high gear and help this kid out, because what you just hypothesized and gave an example to Jerry Buden become Brendan Dassey's life. Do you get what I'm saying there?
Yeah, I definitely get what you're saying. Question for you is, who are you saying should have contacted Drizin?
Jerry Buden. Because Jerry Buden was the person who invited Drizin to come speak because of his expertise at this meeting. So why is he good enough to come talk at big Milwaukee state functions where you got senators involved, you got prosecutors? I mean, it's a bipartisan commission. You have the attorney general involved. You're you're talking at this big elaborate political faction, but you're not good enough 6 days later to get that same expert to say, hey, Drizin, can you look at this? I mean, Drizin states he watched it unfold. He watched the news unfold. Buden is actually in Dean Strang's office at the time, watching this unfold in Madison, right across the street from Peg, Lautenschlager, Fallon, and Fassbender's office. Fassbender's desk was right across the hall from Tom Fallon and Peg Lautenschlager's office when this is going on. And it's funny because June 3rd, the Attorney General released a statement that said electronic monitoring was going to be part of this, and she said that none of these political issues would go to wrongfully convict people, and she rattles off a bunch of issues. Jailhouse snitching, tunnel vision, contaminated DNA, electronic monitoring, juveniles, and this is 5 months before Teresa disappears. But then, come March, Buden's sitting here, literally a stone's throw away from her office, and doesn't even go to her office, knock on the door, and say, "Hey, look, what's going on here? What the hell?" You know. And so he just got off of a 3-month tour with Fassbender, December, January, and February. What's even more ironic. So November 5th and 6th, Anthony O'Neill of Marinette County has labeled Brendan as a suspect, right? I mean, he sees Brendan Dassey from his interview up in Cribbets as being a big suspect. So on November 10th, the day after Steven's arrested, DCI agent Kim Skorlinski interviews Brendan Dassey, okay? And she's a DCI agent. She's a special agent with the Division of Criminal Investigations, and she interviews Brendan, and then we wait from November to February before that camera equipment is got to continue Brendan's his interview and interrogations. And it's funny because Fox Hills just got the camera in on the 26th, and so they call him in and start interviewing him as soon as that camera comes in. Now if it's November 10th and that's your last interview with Brendan, the bill's passed at this time. So anything now that you get Brendan involved in, he's a minor. If you're going to record him, it has to be on video, right? So it should be making perfect sense to you that it should be making perfect sense to Nirider that if Brendan's a suspect, we should be having interrogations way before February, but we don't because they wanted to wait till evidence started coming back and then plant that on Brendan, because you can no longer interview Brendan Dassey after the 10th unless it's on video, because the new Avery bill, the law, that's what it mandates, right? So they put Brendan on the back burner and they learn the new law, and from December, January, and February, is Buden going around with Fassbender teaching law enforcement the new electronic monitoring law, and they never put Brendan on camera until that video equipment comes in and until that training ends. So I mean, to me, I've seen incidents where these political attorneys and whether they're working for the defense or prosecution, I see law enforcement being signaled. Every big thing that happens in Avery's investigation of Teresa Hallback is signaled at these bipartisan commissions, and so you have all these summary meetings, right? And just by pattern, I believe that this was instructing law enforcement how to coerce Brendan Dassey specifically to the new law. and I don't know if you know this, but are you familiar with Assistant Attorney General Tom Fallon?
Tom, say his last name again?
Fallon, Fallon.
No, I'm not.
Okay, so he was a special prosecutor in Brendan's case. He's the Assistant Attorney General of Wisconsin. He was the Assistant Attorney General during the trial. He was the Assistant Attorney General during the investigation. So he sits on some juvenile boards, and prior to Drizin becoming Brendan's post-appellate conviction attorney, Drizin has sat on several boards with Tom Fallon on juvenile departments. Okay, and so it's like okay, so you sit on a board with Tom Fallon, who's supposed to be against juvenile rights and making sure juveniles who commit crimes stay in prison, right? So how are you even like sitting on a board of directors with someone who was opposed to you, right? And so I'm bringing this up is because right before Brendan's on-bank hearing, this Assistant Attorney General Fallon, he held a law enforcement conference, which was bipartisan. It had a lot of people, just besides law enforcement, show up to it, and he used Brendan Dassey as the subject. And during this law enforcement conference, I mean, this takes place 14 days before Brendan Dassey's on-bank hearing, okay? And he invites Wiegert out, he invites Fassbender out, and he gives them awards for convicting and getting a confession out of Brendan Dassey. And Drizin sits on a board with this guy. And now this is 14 days before Brendan's biggest court date of his life. Okay? And it's open to any experts who have all this knowledge. Why did not Drizin show up to that law enforcement conference and speak? But because basically all that was to dumb down. It was to dumb down what happened to Brendan Dassey. Is all it was. It's Madison. It's the Assistant Attorney General saying nothing to see here, folks. Wiegert and Fassbender did everything in their power to get a true confession from Brendan Dassey. He was not illegally interrogated, unconstitutionally interrogated, anything. But I mean, I think it would have been important for Drizin with his expertise or someone to show up and say, hey, this is wrong here, But the thing is, in my eyes, Drizin had a defense for what he gave an example that happened to Brendan Dassey on February 23rd, and he's never used that defense in his entire time working as Brendan's post-appellate conviction attorney. And I find that very disturbing, and I find it very disturbing that he just disappears from the entire spotlight when Ken Kratz gives his press conference on Brendan Dassey, because this is your time to show up and say, oh shit, what I just said 6 days ago became your life, Brendan. And so here it is. I mean, you can read it on page 6 for yourself. It to me is signaling law enforcement on what to do to Brendan Dassey. And if you go back, you look at Jerry Buden's career. He's deep state affiliate. I would call Drizin a deep state affiliate, and Norman Gaughan's a deep state affiliate. These people have had political connections to Madison and these bipartisan commissions for years. And so let me ask this question: if you have all these experts, Norman Gaughan, Drizin, Jerry Buden, and different senators and attorney generals on this case, how do you drop the ball so many times on a case like this? You have the lead experts in it, right? Everybody wants to know why, like Kathleen Zellner, for example, she wants to know why Jerry Buden didn't call a lot of expert witnesses. Well, everything that was in Stephen Avery's trial going on, Buden and Gahn were the expert witnesses. Gahn was working the prosecution, Buden was working the defense, and they had just spent 5 years prior to trial, 4.5 years prior to trial, going over everything on the Avery task force and the Avery bill that all become issues in Stephen Avery's trial. So if you want to talk about expert witnesses, the expert witnesses was everybody who was working for the Avery task force and everybody who was being called in to the Wisconsin Criminal Justice Study Commission, Drizin included. You're using experts to basically get a conviction and play ball for the prosecution here. And so I don't know. I mean, to me, I find it very disturbing that Steven Drizin never showed back up 6 days later. I mean, this isn't a year later. This isn't a year and a half later. 6 days. This is hot and fresh on everybody's mind.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if that strikes you anyway. I mean, I know being in your profession where you're at, there's your mentor is supposed to be your mentor, right?
Well, sure. I mean, also, I'm just not at liberty to talk about the case at all, and so
right.
I can take information and pass it on. I just can't,
right.
I can't even give you my opinion about it.
Right, but you get my opinion on it, right? I mean,
yes, I do indeed, and I'm trying to take almost kind of verbatim notes so that I can express it as accurately as possible.
Right, and I have an email with questions that I have from Miss Nirider. I can probably email that to you, which kind of divulges the information that I gave you too. So with your notes, so she just have it questions. She can read over your notes and then ask herself mental questions too. If I could submit those to you, so that way she doesn't get so lost, because I know it's a lot of information to digest because you're having to go back at certain different times, but those certain different times are factually leading to political events that they're happening right before big things happen in Stephen's case, right before big things happen in Brendan's life, and this should not be happening where Drizin's an expert, but then 6 days later he just falls off the face of the planet, and then comes back a couple of years later and, oh, hey Brendan, I'm your post-appellate conviction attorney. I'm the god of juvenile confessions. You were the god of 6 days later when you predicted his fate. Where the hell were you? And so I'm really honestly not trying to piss anybody in the Innocence Project off. I'm just I definitely don't want to piss Nirider off. I mean, it's just what I see. I find it very disturbing. I find it mind blowing. It's like if anything, Buden should have got with Barb, Brendan's mother, and said, hey, I know you got public defenders, but you want to get this guy as an expert witness for Brendan's case. I mean, I called Drizin personally to show up on February 23rd, 2006. He gave an exact example of what happened to your son. He predicted the future, basically, and then he has this really great defense on how to destroy the confession by destroying the reliability of the evidence found. And to this date, that the reliability of their evidence defense has never been applied. So it blows my mind for this poor kid.
So, Chad, thank you so much for reaching out and for all of your insights. I think I've captured everything. If I have any further questions, I'll make sure to reach back out to you. But I will pass my notes on to Laura and see what she thinks.
Right. Is there an email I can leave you these questions to?
Sure. Yes, it's Jaji. .hammer HAMMER.
Hold on, it wanted to turn my J to an H. Okay, .hammer, and that's HAMMER, hammer.
You got it,
okay.
Hammer, yeah. at northwestern.edu.
At northwestern.edu. Okay. Well, thank you very much for your time, and I will.
Thank you for caring, Chad. Really.
Yeah, just anything that can get Brendan Dassey home. I mean, even if it's the whatever. I mean, just anything. Our love goes out to Brendan always, and we'll never stop fighting. We'll never stop fighting for him. So
that's the spirit.
So just wanted to share this information, but thank you very much.
Thank you, Chad. Have a good day.
You too.
Bye.
Okay, so that's my discussion with Jaji Hammer, who is Nirider's assistant. Let's see what gets to Nirider. What's important, the members of this commission hearing actually filmed this meeting, so we need to get the context of Buting and Drizin of this video, live video. It was filmed by Laura and Mora. And so does that meeting show signaling law enforcement? Is Drizin signaling law enforcement on how to coerce Brendan Dassey? Thing is, you can read this last little excerpt right here that Drizin's putting in to account that all becomes literally parts of Brendan Dassey's fate in the next 6 days on March 1st when he's coerced. So I'm going to leave you with one little thing. I followed up with questions for Nirider, sent them to Jaji, and my last two questions is, regardless, does anyone owe it to Brendan Dassey to say it's plausible Steven Drizin may have purposely screwed him? And political attorneys with deep state affiliations are the only experts that wouldn't come to Brendan's rescue during his trial, but would show up on Tom Fallon's behalf as a post-appellate attorney to help exhaust Brendan's appeals. Yeah, so I feel, honestly, that with Drizin and Fallon sitting together on these boards, Drizin is honestly exhausting appeals for Brendan Dassey. I don't know how you feel about it, but that's how I feel about it looking at this meeting in depth. Again, Nirider needs to pull this video of this meeting. It was filmed by Laura and Mora, and we need to get that video, and we all need to watch that video, because I see a pattern of anytime something big happens in Stephen Avery's case, there is a political meeting in a bipartisan commission going on prior to it happening. Okay, so with that being said, I'm going to leave y'all to dissect this video for yourself. The evidence is right there. Literally, Buting gets up, asks Drizin stuff, and it literally becomes Brendan Dassey's fate. No one can argue that. That is factual. And no one can argue the fact that 6 days later, if Drizin was an expert good enough to be at this commission, he was damn good enough to be an expert witness at Brendan Dassey's trial. But he wasn't. Just things to make you say, So, Nirider, do your job. Get Drizin to answer these questions in your email and follow back. Now, Drizin, if you would like to talk to me personally, you got my phone number. Nirider has my phone number. I would love to have a conversation with you. Jaji, thank you for your time today. I hope that this information, something is done with it.